So that's good. So just before we broke, so hopefully you had a good breakout session. No, there was a bit of a problem with Councillor Latty getting into that, but we will try and fix that. What else is going on in the chat? Hobnobs, yes, absolutely. So we were going to say if there are any questions, and there's one from Steve at Carers Leeds. I just wondered if Steve was, so he's currently on hold. But does anybody else have any questions that you would like to ask either myself, Hannah? I think Chris Mills will have probably disappeared. But are there any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself and just.
Councillor Green's got his hand up on the raise hand function, Graham.
Okay. Councillor Green.
Thank you. Yes. My question really was about the frailty, the different categories, and if it is the health characteristics which have put people into those moderate or severe categories, or whether there has been an influence of available funding which has compromised some of those boundaries.
I think I'll start by trying to answer that. So the way that the levels of frailty is calculated is this electronic frailty index. So that's been developed between TPP, the people that make System 1, which is a primary care management system, and academia. So they've done some research, and there's papers that I can share about the methodology that they used. But essentially what happens when a person attends a GP consultation, the GP starts to code things about them, and and other people on this call will know more about this than me, but they're called read codes. So there's essentially a read code for pretty much everything, and the research that they carried out was to say, okay, what are the read codes that would come together that would give us an indication that a person is living with frailty? And again, I can share the underlying lists of read codes. There's I think there's about 2,000 of them. But what they then did was say, let's clump those into buckets, if you like. And that comes out with these 36 frailty measures, or they actually call them deficits, but that's not a good Leeds word. It's not very positive. So essentially, the more of those measures or deficits that you have as a person, it puts you into the different levels of frailty. So I think moderate frailty, I think, is around 9 measures, and I think something like over 13 tips you into the next level of frailty. So I can double check that and circulate that back to you. But that's essentially how it's created. That it's just the things that primary care colleagues code about people when they appear in primary care. And if anyone else wants to jump in on that answer, then feel free. Oh, Chris is there. There you go.
I think the only other thing is then they correlate that to outcomes to a degree. So the more frail you are, the higher risk of hospitalisation, lengths of stay, and mortality.
Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Anyone else got any questions at this point? Okay. Right. On to the next bit. So, screen 2. Okay. So we've done some questions. If we move on. So the next part that we would like to go through is I essentially want to introduce you to a guy called Simon Sinek. So some of you may be familiar with his work, some may not. He's a British-born American author and motivational speaker. He's quite famous for doing a number of TED Talks, and he's got quite a big presence on YouTube and places like that. And he worked for a number of years in New York advertising agencies, and then later launched his own business. And in October 2009, he wrote his first book. Oh yeah, good point. I'm going to stop there because we need to do feedback. Thanks, Neil. I'm just going to stop. I was getting carried away. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Right, sorry about that. We're going to do a bit of a round robin in sharing back what we just talked about in our breakout sessions. So, so seeing as Neil put his hand up, do you want to go first with some feedback from Otley and Airborough? I'll pick you.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, Graham. No problem at all. I think I've been taken advantage of on a couple of occasions there now, Graham. So you've just said that Otley and Airborough can go first, and I've also just been cajoled in the group that I would feedback rather than nominating a spokesperson. So yeah, so thanks for that. So anyway, so the things that we kind of spoke about in terms of aging well in Otley and Airborough. First of all, we started thinking about the individual first and kind of linking it to some of the aspects of the frailty fulcrum. So specifically the social environment, the physical environment, and also kind of the care systems in terms of the support that's delivered for people who need that support. So one of the main things around living well in Otley and Airborough were around that social interaction and the importance of maintaining and having access and opportunity to socially interact with other people. And kind of linked into that was this kind of real importance of maintaining purpose for an individual. And that can obviously take a lot of different it can look a lot different for different people, really. So in order to maintain purpose, you've really got to utilize the skills and kind of the wants and aspirations of that particular person, and kind of provide opportunities to be able for those kind of skills to be used, essentially. So yeah, so that was they were the kind of the main themes, but the thing that kind of cut across all of that was maintaining independence. And when I say cut across all of that, it kind of cuts across the aspects of the frailty fulcrum that we were talking about before. So those three important aspects of social environment, physical environment, and the care systems, they're essentially there to kind of promote and kind of enable that independence, really. And we know that obviously a kind of a lack of independence, or this kind of lack of agency over your own life, can have an impact on that kind of that feeling of your purpose, really. So that was some of the things that we spoke about from a person perspective, and then we had a little chat about it from a system perspective, and what does the system do, or what is the system and the care service in Otley and Airborough there in order to kind of promote that, really, and to kind of what is their stake in aging well, really, in Otley and Airborough. And the main thing was for services to make sure that a person feels listened to, that the service isn't done to, it's done with, and essentially in partnership, and to be able to kind of promote that kind of feeling of agency of a person's kind of care and management of their kind of conditions, really. And there's a few things that link into that about person's empowerment and education around their kind of condition, but also education about the assets that are in the community as well. And then also there was a kind of a strong reference to the actual services within the locality working well together. There's been some early work over in Otley and Airborough around kind of a community-based pathway for dementia. Part of that was almost service mapping, really, about on that kind of life course of dementia, where the services interact with people along that, really. So it's having that understanding from a service provision perspective of what else is going on in the patch. And once you've got that understanding of what is going on in the patch, you're probably in a much better position to be able to collaborate. So yeah, that was where we got up to. We didn't get up to the barriers, which is the bit that I normally like, but we didn't quite get to that bit.
That's great. Thanks, Neil. Crossgates. Who would like to feedback for Crossgates?
All right, that's me. That's it. Can everybody hear me? Yeah.
I can,
so,
yeah.
That's fine. Sorry, it was going on and off there. So we looked, first of all, at what was good in Crossgates for ageing well, and we were saying access to classes, social support, remaining active, and overall maintaining independence. So being able to access services when they need them. Within Crossgates, we were saying what was good in Crossgates, and we've obviously got the Crossgates shopping centre, which was felt to be key to people having that independence, and the New Thought Park Centre as well was going to help, and we felt that the way across Crossgates were in place to help and support people. We then moved on to looking at the area that's particularly been highlighted in Crossgates, which is polypharmacy, and we said this would work well if people felt in control, empowered to manage their needs and their medications, and involved in their own healthcare around medication. So the barriers to that was mainly around support and what support people could get to do this. There are lots of people involved in that process. We've got GPs, social prescribers, community pharmacy technicians, community pharmacists, but actually giving people that confidence and understanding about their own medication and why they were prescribed what they were prescribed and how they could manage that, we felt was difficult, even with all those people, because how do they and who do they access to get that support? A lot of jargon around it. So I think that was where we got to, is that sort of support for individuals to manage their own medications.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. So both groups that have fed back so far have both mentioned maintaining independence. So that's an interesting theme. So moving on to Armley. Who would like to feedback for Armley?
You're muted, Pablo.
Thank you. I clicked twice. We started discussion with the importance of coding and the quality of coding. And one thing is that, and the other thing is knowing the community. That to some extent in our area, it seemed that there was a good correlation, and there was an agreement that mental health and COPD, asthma were large determinants of frailty. The fact as well is that things have changed since COVID, and there has been a huge increase on mental health issues because of COVID, which will change how things are going to be in the future. On top of that, the way of working changed the way we interact with people, and we are moving to a digital platform, to telephones, and that in itself is creating a bit more inequality because not everybody has got access to this, and we have got, we mentioned about patients coming directly to the practice as a way of getting the attention because they could not do other way. And then a big issue is how we're going to do with the community, how we're going to improve things. And first, starting that there are plenty of services, but many of them are not well known and perhaps not used enough, while others are over-subscribed. And it's a question of not quantity, but quality of the relationship. And in itself, as well, having this integrated service is based on having an efficient service, whether you can say mine perhaps service is oversubscribed, but you can do to other one that could do for you. But as well, by doing that, you reduce the bureaucracy. And in one of your TED chat that you mentioned from this author, New York, I can't remember his name. The issue was that if you are focusing to collecting data, you are repeating the same story all the time, starting from the beginning. And you cannot have the expectation of patients saying, let's start from the beginning because I have to get into a new provider and you have to get data for your record. So it's quite important that everything is efficient and as well that is coordinated. And we'll stop there.
Okay, thanks, Pablo. That was interesting. Weatherby. Who wants the feedback for Weatherby?
Hi Graham, sorry, I'm going to feedback on behalf of Weatherby. We had a really good discussion in the Weatherby breakout room. So what does it mean to age well in Weatherby and the surrounding area? We said that on the whole, Weatherby and the surrounding area is generally a good place to age well. It's quite an affluent area, as we know. In the villages as well as the town, there's some village halls, churches, clubs, lots going on for people, leisure centre, there's a good neighbourhood network, lots of green space for people. And something that came up time and time again in our discussion was the really good relationship between adult social care and the GP practices, lots of working together and good conversations happening between health and social care. And that was felt to be a really strong element of what was working well in that area. We had a sort of chat about the socially vulnerable cohort, which is standing out in the Weatherby area, and said that even though it is seen as quite an affluent area, there are some real pockets of poverty and deprivation, and a lot of social isolation and loneliness, and people who are just off the radar of services in general. In terms of barriers, one of the things that came across very strongly is the very high expectations of a lot of the people who live in the area, and a culture of people who really expect everything to be done for them as opposed to self-managing their own health issues. So that was something that came across very strongly, that there would need to be some work on changing that culture of people who staff knew could self-manage, but actually felt that they, wanted everything to be handed to them on a plate, basically. Transport also came up as a barrier. In a rural area, people struggling to get to services. And also maybe there's been a lack of sort of social prescribing in the area because the PCN hasn't had somebody dedicated to social prescribing, and perhaps also that linking leads hasn't been used a huge amount in the area as well. So that's something that sounds like something we could take forward. So yeah, really interesting and informative discussion. So thank you everybody in Weatherby.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Alison. And Morley, who would like to feedback from Morley?
I think that's me, Graham.
Okay.
So we strayed a little bit off topic in terms of what works well for Morley, because we'd had some exciting data provided by Graham that was a bit of bonus extra data that we'd not had chance to discuss, which was looking at Morley through a lens of health inequalities. And what we'd found out was that we've got a kind of peak of people with moderate frailty that sit in decile 3 of the IMD deprivation index, which means that we've got a chunk of our frail population that we know are living in the bottom third of the population in the country in terms of deprivation. So we spent a little bit of time thinking about what that meant for us and whether we wanted to revisit the way that we approach our cohort and how that affected our discussions. So we had a look at our map to see where those people were living and what that might mean in terms of their access the services in Morley and how they might experience the wealth of things that are available through the different services, the kind of town centre and all of that. So we've decided that that's very much the way that we want to kind of focus our approach, looking at what's making people housebound in that area, what can we do around supporting people with arthritis, diabetes, some of the problems that we're seeing coming up, and how does that link in then with the assets in that community. So we were starting to think about some of the services available, so thinking, well, there might be plenty of access to chiropodists in Morley, but are they private chiropodists? Is it that people are needing to pay for it? So actually, in terms of the cohort that we're looking at, does it exclude some of the people that we're trying to support? One of our colleagues from Groundwork reflected that people sometimes view Morley as an affluent area, maybe because you've got it increasingly as somewhere where there's a lot of new housing in that district, there's a lot of younger families, it's kind of commuter belt for the M62, but actually that can then mask the reality for a lot of older people, that the older people within Morley are maybe the ones that are living in those more deprived areas and deprived parts of Morley, but are we overlooked for some of the support and services because of that sometimes? And then we started talking about transport as well, and that transport really can be an issue, both in terms of older people being able to get into the city centre to access services like those offered by Carers Leeds, Age UK, but also that Morley as a district, it's quite large. So even just getting about within Morley and travelling from one place within another, sometimes transport networks can be a real issue and a real barrier. And that can be true for people looking for local employment as well. So we've got people from the local home care agency, Be Caring, as part of our group, and they were saying really their carers need access to a car to be able to fulfill their role because of that geography. It is very hard for people to be able to do that on foot. So a very broad ranging discussion. We also started to touch on leisure activities for older people, particularly if they had carers or caring responsibilities, and just how hard it is sometimes to find information on things like that, that we're kind of sure there's plenty of brilliant leisure facilities, but are they suitable for our particular cohort, and how do they find out about it if some of the professionals in the area are struggling to find out this information? So that's kind of a broad summary of where we got to.
Thank you very much, Kim. Okay, so before we go into our next section, again, does anybody have any feedback or any questions that they'd like to ask of anybody, or any comment that you'd like to make? Feel free to chip in. Good point from Karen. It's very hilly in Morley. Yes. Okay, so if we've got if there's no other kind of questions or points that people would like to make, we'll just continue. So we're just slightly ahead of time. This is going well. So let me share my screen with you again. Let me check you can all see that. Yeah. So as I started rattling on before Neil stopped me, so I'd like to introduce you to a guy called Simon Sinek, a British-born American guy, and he wrote his first book, which I suppose put him on the map of kind of inspirational thinking and thought, and it's called Start With Why, and he published that in October 2009. It's available in all good bookshops and some not very good bookshops. Support your local independent bookshop if you can. And it's this first book that we're just going to focus on today. So it's around starting with why. So I'm going to play you a video. So this is a very much a shortened video. It's just 5 minutes long. And this guy is introducing, so it's part of a TED talk. Hopefully you'll have heard of TED Talks, and I can send you links. Well, you've already had the links to the bigger, longer TED Talk. But basically this guy's saying there's a different way of thinking about a proposition. So he's coming from a marketing perspective. So he talks a lot about product. He always talks a lot about Apple. Most people have heard of Apple products. So it's a different way of thinking about a proposition for a product. And he offers his kind of insight on looking at defining that in a different way. So we're going to watch this video, and then we'll just have another couple of slides, and then we'll go into a group exercise about why are we here. So I think it's important that we as an LCP team, we've done this exercise, which I'll share with you in a second. Yeah, so if you sit back, enjoy this particular video. Let me share my YouTube, so bear with us a second. So this is just 5 minutes long.
Mute.
I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat screen TVs. They've been making flat screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. And Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. When we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. You know, sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and your figures, and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right, because the part of the brain that controls decision-making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision-making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal?
So hopefully that has inspired you. And just that takeaway comment or phrase that he uses all the way through there is, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I guess it's worked for Apple quite successfully over a number of years. So I just wanted to, so why did you get out of bed this morning, and why should anybody care? So I got out of bed this morning because I was very excited to bring this session to you today. And I definitely care about improving the health and well-being of people in Leeds. And I expect you guys do too. So every single person on the planet knows what they do, as Simon has just told us. Some know how they do it, their USP, as he said, but few people or organisations know why they do it. What is your cause? What is your belief? It's quite a simple idea, but actually it takes a bit of thought getting there. So the Local Care Partnership Development Team, who I am part of, and you'll have met most of them by now. So we did this exercise. So if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, how will you ever get people to believe what you believe? So we took some time out as a team to think about our why, and this is what we came up with. So our why is, we believe in doing things differently and in nurturing change to improve personalised care with the people of Leeds. And how we're going to do that is, as a team, we will develop and strengthen relationships to connect the system, remove barriers, and make sure all voices are heard. And our what is, we believe that people from all communities will have control over their health and well-being. Our system will reduce health inequalities between communities and make the right thing the easiest thing to do. And I hope you can see that I think that's quite a powerful 3 statements really that you can get behind. When somebody says, what do you do for a living? You can live those as statements and values. So back to our groups. So I would like you guys to have a discussion in your groups about what is your local care partnership, why, how, and what. I absolutely don't expect you to get a fully formed 3 paragraphs or 3 sentences in this very short time, but I just want you to think in your groups, can we come up with our why? If someone was to say, well, what is the Crossgates Local Care Partnership? That you would then be able to have something that you could, you know, that 30-second elevator pitch, not that we're allowed to go in lifts at the moment, but you know what I mean. Could we develop a bit of a strap line, couple of rules for our team? Elsewhere in the lead system, I've heard people saying things like, we do no harm and we don't break the bank. You know, they're not bad things, not bad values to live by. So what would our why be? So in a second, I'm going to ask you to do that slightly complicated thing about jumping back out into the breakout rooms. So I think before we only had a couple of people that couldn't access that, but we'll work on that. So hopefully the development managers and the support officers will have jumped out and restarted those meetings in your breakout groups. So in a second, I'd like you to move to those groups and we'll reconvene back here. I think it's 12, but also in the meantime, I'm just going to set up Slido to ask a question about one word. What is your one word why? And perhaps we'll have a word cloud. So again, in Slido, in your own time, give us a couple of seconds to set that up. What's your one word why? So thank you very much. And if you would like to join your breakout groups, I'll see you in 20 minutes.
Graham, if we follow the link that we had for the last breakout room, will that take us back to the same thing?
I think it might do. Yes, try it. If not, come back and we can have a chat. to reply to Jonathan's message in the chat. I don't think anyone say anything. Feel free to tell us a joke or sing us a song while we just wait for people to come back. No, I'm serious. Crack on.
My dad jokes are appalling, Graham. I've been banned from many a meeting for life. I won't subject you to them.
No, never mind. Okay, so I think we're gradually all coming back. There's a couple of people still on hold from Otley and Airborough, so they must be having some fun in their room. Hopefully everyone managed to get into the breakout room and come back, so that seems to be working. And I'm just sharing my screen of the what is your one word why on Slido, and there's some pretty good words there. Equality is coming out, so most people have used that word so far. So the more people that add that word, the bigger the word gets on the word cloud.
If people that can't access Slido want to type their why into the chat, we can add them into Slido for you so that you can be part of the word cloud.
Yeah. Fab. Right, so looking at the list of participants, most people are back. Fantastic. So keep adding your words. I'm just going to give that another couple of seconds because I need to stop that particular question and change it for another one in a minute while Kim is talking. So many windows open. So right, so thank you very much so far to everyone who has taken part in today. I'm absolutely chuffed that so many people have made it onto this call. I was a bit worried, but actually the people of Leeds have sorted it. It's great. I'm absolutely made up. So thank you very much to everybody. So I'm just going to hand over to Kim Adams and she can introduce herself. Probably most of you know her anyway, but you're not getting away lightly. There is stuff to do because this is our 20-week program, but what we've found is the fun stuff and the work happens outside of these meetings. So I'm going to hand over to Kim and she's going to tell you about your homework.
Thanks, Graham. So yeah, definitely everybody can expect plenty of homework going on between meetings because we think this is part of the success of how you get most out of this programme. So I'm Kim Adams. I head up the Local Care Partnership Development Team. I think most of you probably do know me, but we've definitely got one or two new faces in the room today. So I'm not sure I do know all of you. I just, before I do my little bit, wanted to say a massive thanks to Graham because he's right, this has been a team effort. There's been a lot of work gone on behind the scenes with this, but there's absolutely no doubt about it. Graham has really pulled this together. He's been the one that has been kind of chivying us all, chasing up people, worrying that everything's going to run smoothly today. And I think he's done an absolute cracking job of hosting it as well. So definitely massive thank you to Graham. And also tucked away, hidden behind the scenes, I also want to thank the project support officers, Akosia, Anna, Abs, Lindsay, Liam and Lynn. So they will be the people, you won't all necessarily know them, but some of you will have spent some time with them over the past few weeks, getting set up on Teams, checking things out, practicing to make sure that you can get in and access things today. So again, they've been doing some great work behind the scenes to try and make sure that today goes as smoothly as possible. So as I say, we're going to be looking to set you some tasks that we want you to work on as local care partnerships in between meetings. And My team will be helping and supporting you to do that. We'll help you to set up your kind of in-between meetings. We'll help to shape how those conversations work, but it's just really trying to make sure that you're fully prepared to take part in workshop 2 and that you get plenty from it. So the first thing that I would say about that is it's a relatively straightforward one, and that is if there's anything that's come up today, either in the presentations or in your group discussions, where you think there's somebody missing from this group. So it might be that you've had a conversation around housing and housing needs and you think, oh, we haven't got a housing partner in the room, then flag that with one of the care partnership team or at your next local care partnership meeting, and we can make sure that we've got those right partners involved for you in this work. So that's the easy one. Second one is, at the next workshop, we're going to be looking at the importance of involving the people who need support in designing that, what that support might look like. So we want to make sure that people are absolutely at the heart of this programme, and we'll be having Health Watch come along to us to talk about why that's important and to look at some tools and tricks that we might be able to use in co-design. And then we're going to be looking at asset mapping. So that's looking at what are the strengths and assets that we've got in the community, in all of you as a workforce. What different skills, experience, knowledge do you bring that once you all start to pool that, you're much stronger together than if you're working in individual silos and just pushing referrals around the system. But again, we want to start by thinking about the strengths and assets of the person. So what do they actually bring to this themselves? Are they a resilient individual? Have they got strong character? Have they got interests and gifts and talents that they bring in? What about their family and friends and the local community? So we're not wanting to forget them as assets either. So we want you to think about what you've heard today, and especially some of the things Hannah was saying around what active healthy aging looks like. And we want you to talk to local people and find out from those local people how it feels for them, what their experience of aging is. This can be a bit challenging in lockdown. We can't all go off to the local coffee morning that the neighbourhood network might be doing, or start to approach people in shopping centres and stop them for a chat. We're going to have to do a lot of this virtually potentially, but you've probably got organisations in your population health management group that can ask some of the people that they support whether they'd maybe like to join one of your Zoom meetings and share their experience. So Crossgate's Early Doors, they got a couple of members of Crossgate's Good Neighbours, the local neighbourhood network, to join a local care partnership meeting and just share their experiences of lockdown and COVID. So you could do something similar here. You might already have some people that you think they'd love to come and talk to us as a group and share what it's like to live as an older person in their local care partnership area. You might also want to do it on a one-to-one basis. So you might have organisations that are happy to chat to their members or service users and say, would you mind having a bit of a chat with one of my colleagues around your experience of what it's like to live here and be an older person, and explain that we're looking at how we improve health and support. You might just have the opportunity to bring it into conversations with people that you're already supporting as part of your role. So it might be as simple as that. But what we're wanting to do is get as much of a perspective as we can from older people, that you then bring it back to your local care partnership. And when we come into workshop 2, we'll be giving each of you as local care partnerships a little bit of time to share with the others what you found in between. So we want you to do that homework, but then also decide what are the important things to feed back to this bigger group. And if you need any help thinking about the types of questions, the types of language you might use, then I'm sure Hannah would be very happy to share some of what she found out worked when she was doing the work around aging well, and the sort of language she used that she found got the best response from people and engaged them. So yeah, Hannah's just volunteered definitely in the chat that she'd be happy to do that. So please do use Hannah as a resource in this as well if you want some tips and ideas. So that was it for me. I'm going to pass back to Graham to see if there's any last questions and to round us off for the day. Thanks everybody.
Thank you very much, Kim. Yeah, so timing wise, we've done really well. Fantastic. So we're going to finish a little bit earlier, unless there are any questions. And I've also just changed the question in Slido, and I'll leave that up for an hour or so. Just be interesting to know what your key takeaways were from today's session. Much talk of biscuits and chocolate and gin, all excellent. So I'll leave that up there. So if there's no questions, let me just check the chat.
Could I ask you something, Graham?
Of course you can, yeah.
Thank you. I'm just wondering how you get in touch with people, because I wasn't sure who everyone was today.
Okay.
That's the only thing I would like to ask.
So in terms of who I am and who Kim is and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I suppose there was a bit of an assumption. So I've been round to to all of the Wave 3 LCPs to talk about how we got to this point. So I'm happy we can set something up to get you up to that level as well, if you would like. But essentially, I suppose I never know how to describe myself. I'm the data dude that does that kind of stuff. So if PHM is driven by data, that's where I come into it. So I'm supporting the LCP development team in terms of presenting data that people could start to have a look at and create those cohorts of people to test things with. But also if folk have got those other questions about, well, can we dig into this data a little bit more? As Kim said earlier, in Morley and Crossgates, and another LCP that I've forgotten, I've done some stuff around health inequalities. We can slice and dice data into lots and lots of different ways, and all, health inequalities is a real focus at the moment. So where do the people live that have these certain conditions, or where does our cohort live? Because we all know that where you live has a direct kind of correlation link to your health outcomes. So I'm a data person. I suppose maybe on the next workshop we could do a proper formal introductions of the team, if you like. Would that help?
Yeah, no, it's just if I wanted to get in touch with somebody, do you have all our email addresses, or how does it work?
We do. You can use Teams. You can send a message in Teams in the chat, or you can send us an email. My email is graham.hyde@leeds.gov.uk. Just use whatever channel you like and we will steer you in the right direction.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
Hey,
cool.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
It was just a bit of a practical one, really, from the third sector. I just wondered if a decision had been made on the funding.
I will defer to somebody that knows more about that than me, so I'll go for Kim.
Good choice, Graham.
Thanks.
So yeah, the third sector funding on this, so this is for third sector organisations to be able to take part in the programme, sits with Forum Central. So you can either talk to myself or Carl Whitty in the first instance, or possibly Pip Goff as well if you can get Pip. So it's Forum Central that will be administering that, Debbie, and that's where you'd need to put your claims through for time. But I can get Carl to send out all the details of how that will work.
Okay, so any other questions?